Hi there. In this video we look at the syntax rules for writing HTML tags. So when we write a tag, again, the thing that makes it a tag is that we have the less than at the start and the greater than at the finish. But then there's some other rules. When we write these to make the browser recognize them, we just got to do certain things in a certain way. So rule number one is you do not want a space. There's got to be no spaces between the less than and the first letter of our element inside our tag. So let's save this and test it out, and then we'll put a space in there and show you what happens. So if we save that, let's go here to the folder where we have this, and here's my file. I call it syntax. But when I load this page, everything goes okay. There's my picture, there's my link. Now let's go and put a space. We'll do it in both these tags. We'll just put one space in here. We'll save this, and now we'll reload the page here. And you notice what happens. The browser no longer recognizes the tag. He says, oh, this is just text. So the only way that he knows that that's a tag and it's an instruction for him to do something is if there are no spaces. So let's remove those spaces and then reload the page. And you see it's back to being the picture and the link. Okay, so that's syntax rule number one. The rest of these syntax rules, it's going to be a little confusing. We're not going to be able to test them so easily, and we'll explain why in a little bit. But the next syntax rule is all of our elements within our tag need to be lowercase. So we don't want this. We don't want big IMG. We don't want big I and little mg. We just want IMG like this. Same thing for the attributes. The attributes case sensitive, and it should always be lowercase. So that's syntax rule number two, is have everything lowercase. And then syntax rule number three, there's sometimes we might do an uppercase letter, but that's only if it's supposed to be uppercase. Then syntax rule number three is we always have an equal sign between the attribute and its value. The next syntax rule is all attribute values must be inside quotes. So it doesn't matter if we use single quotes or double quotes. The only thing is, if I start with a single quote, I need to end with a single quote. If I start with a double quote, I need to end with a double quote. And even within the same tag, I can mix these up. But that's syntax rule number 3 or 4. I lost count here. You have to quote every one of these values. Okay, now here comes a little bit of a tricky one. This is syntax rule number 5, and that is that every element must have a close tag, or we have to tell the browser how we're closing this. So there's two ways, I don't know if you noticed this, but there's two ways that we actually say this tag is being closed. This image one has a slash and then a greater than, while this A tag up here only has just a greater than. And here's the story behind this. This tag is called a replace tag. It's a kind of tag, and there's only 3 of these. There's the image, and then there's this break, which we looked at the other day. It's just to put a line break in. And let's save this and show you what happens again with that line break. So you notice right now these things are on the same line, but when I put a line break in there, it drops the link to Google down to the next line. Okay, so those are 2 of the elements that we call them replaced elements or standalone. And then the third one is this HR, which stands for horizontal rule. So I could be wrong, there could be more, but I'm pretty sure my memory's just bad. I think there's just 3. Okay, so this horizontal rule, what this says is draw a line across the page. That's what put this line here. And the nice thing about the horizontal rule is you notice that line grows and shrinks to fit the window. Okay, so these are the 3 elements that might close this way. And here's the difference between these. These are not turning something on and then turning them off. These are just saying to the browser, whenever you see this image tag, replace all this code with the picture. When you see this BR tag, replace this with a picture. When you see, with a line break. When you see the HR, replace this with a line. Replace it with a horizontal rule. I'm not turning a line on and turning it off later. I'm not turning a break on and turning it off later. I'm not turning a picture on and turning it off later. So that's what this is saying. This is saying you're not going to find a close tag for me. As opposed to these tags, every other tag we're going to see, like this start tag ends with a greater than. And if it ends with just a greater than, that means, hey, I'm turning something on. I'm saying that this is a link, and this is a link object, and everything between this start tag and this close tag is going to be the link object. Or I can make this text, I can emphasize it. I can make it bold. Actually, let's move this over here. And again, we'll look at this EM tag later on. But it's on until I turn it off. So again, these types of tags, they're going to have content in the middle. They're telling the browser, hey, modify this content. Make it a link. Make this bold. Let's save this and show you again what we're talking about. So there, I'm sorry, it makes it italic, not bold. But that's our last syntax rule, is every tag must have a close. And the close is either this, to say you're not going to find a separate close tag. This is the start tag and close tag all in one. Or if I end my start tag with a greater than, then you're going to find a separate close tag later on. And if we have close tags, you notice this. The close tag, its syntax is less than slash and then the element name. And you don't want any spaces in any of this. You can have spaces out here. These don't matter at the end. But at the start, you don't want any spaces. Okay, and then let's see. Is there any other syntax rules we need to worry about? This is basically it. And these, let me emphasize this too. These are the xhtml syntax rules. These are not the HTML syntax rules. We'll come back and explain that in the next video. So let's just run through these again. No space between the less than and the first letter of our element in our tag. Everything's lowercase, or it's case sensitive, and we're typically lowercase. All attributes must be quoted. They have to have quotes. Doesn't matter double quote or single quote, as long as you start and finish with the same one. And every tag must have, it's either a standalone tag, but it's got to have some type of close. So we either close it with a slash greater than, and again, there's only 3 that we do this way, or we close it with an actual close tag. And then the last syntax rule is for the close tags. Their syntax is less than slash and then the element name. Well, I guess the one other syntax rule is you never put attributes in the close tag. So it just knows that it's closing this A. We don't have to worry about any of the attributes here. Okay, so that's it for XHTML syntax rules.